Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of BTTH Rebirth of Emperor Yang episode number 41 based on novel. So let's start. Suddenly, Ling Tian drank violently, but it suddenly came from the giant beast's mouth. Then, a wave of fierce fighting ripples suddenly spread from his mouth and bombarded him violently, making him want to close his mouth. The next moment, the dazzling golden light suddenly shot out of his mouth and shone on Kyushu. There was a faint sound of dragons singing, which was extraordinary. Roar. Vaja glazed body, beast, get away from me. With a roar, the open mouth of the giant beast was suddenly opened uncontrollably at the moment, and a golden giant was also suddenly above the sky. At the moment when the giant beast was forcibly opened, the huge fist of the golden giant fell down and smashed the huge fist of thousands of miles of mountains and rivers. At the next moment, it smashed the top of the giant beast. Get out of here. The fierce fist movement made the space around him shrink sharply. It didn't burst out until the moment when the giant fist fell on the top of the beast. Boom. A terrible sound like a nuclear bomb explosion made the space completely disappear at this moment. Its original natural and harmonious rhythm was swept by an invisible terrorist storm, which made the energy barrier covering the whole mountain forest tremble violently at the moment. When the fist fell, the giant beast's huge head suddenly looked like a pool of disgusting mud. Not only the domineering black horn was smashed by the fist, but also half of the whole head was forcibly bombed. However, without waiting for the beast to move, Xiao Yan, who turned into a golden giant, suddenly moved back with his big hand, flashed a flash of light, and the wide giant ruler returned to his palm again. Starting with the giant ruler, it is like a dagger. Its huge body makes the giant ruler look much smaller. There was no pause because of the slightly strange feeling in the palm. Starting with the giant ruler, Xiao Yang suddenly smashed the giant beast in front of him, and the black mucus splashed out and fell down. Boom, boom, boom. Under the fierce attack of Xiao Yang's fist after fist, the giant beast, which was once overbearing, has completely turned into a pool of mud and has no power to fight back. Boom. The last punch, only a little black mucus left, was also blasted by Xiao Yang's punch. When the golden light dispersed, Xiao Yang finally grasped the ruler handle again, and the familiar feeling was immersed in his heart. However, Xiao Yang's eyes fell on two palms. Because of the long-term violent smashing, the strange black mucus also adhered to Xiao Yang's palm. Xiao Yang didn't pay much attention to it when he smashed it. At this moment, Xiao Yang clearly felt that under the palm covered by the black mucus, bursts of tingling feeling were rapidly spreading through some exposed skin. Xiao Yang saw that his palm had turned into a grey-black color at the moment. His eyebrows were slightly wrinkled. Xiao Yang looked at the black mucus and looked surprised at the words in his mouth. This thing can invade toxins into my body through my different fire defense. It seems to be a trouble. The palm of his hand was grasped violently. Because of poisoning, when the palm was held up, a numbness was also introduced into Xiao Yang's heart. While holding the palm, the gorgeous strange fire in Xiao Yang's body also rises from Xiao Yang's palm with a puff. The hot strange fire fiercely burns the lacquer black mucus on the palm like a butcher slaughtering meat. But even if Xiao Yang's different fire is burned again, the lacquer black mucus attached to Xiao Yang's palm is still indifferent. Xiao Yang's different fire has little effect on it, almost to the point where it can be ignored. Xiao Yang could not help but frown deeper when he saw this, but his eyes were at random. On the palm holding a huge ruler, the black mucus quickly faded and turned into nothingness. Seeing this scene, Xiao Yang's eyes suddenly lit up. He naturally knew what could be there except nothingness swallowing inflammation. At the moment, the power of nothingness swallowing inflammation is also fully displayed. His eyes narrowed slightly, and the palm held by Xiao Yang spread out again, and then one shot on the giant ruler. The deep and empty giant ruler shook slightly, spreading a circle of invisible ripples. Xiao Yang's palm was almost swallowed by it. At the moment when Xiao Yang's palm touched the giant ruler, the hot flame as black as ink rushed up in an instant, evaporated the dark mucus in an instant, and Xiao Yang's palm also returned to normal. Hey Yan, thank you. Touching the familiar dark flame on the giant ruler, Xiao Yang suddenly spit out a word of thanks. Immediately, Xiao Yang's momentum shook again, and he stepped on the void, so that the earth below was suddenly smashed into a deep pit, and Xiao Yang's body was also pulled up in an instant, holding a huge ruler, and rushed towards the black barrier above the sky. High above the sky, Luo Laro looked at Xiao Yang who rushed in. On his old face, he also showed a relaxed smile. He glanced at the increasingly dim barrier in front of him, sneered and said, It seems that your necromancer poison has been destroyed. Next, Haimu, it's your turn. At the end of the voice, Luo Laro also looked sharp and fierce. At the same time, his dry palm was suddenly hit out. Its power was not weaker than the human-level advanced fighting skills, and even worse than that. However, the result of this time is different from that before. It is a dark arm gathered by the black fog that welcomes Luo Laro's palm. The two touch each other, and the fierce fighting storm sweeps across in an instant, which makes the void within a radius of thousands of miles smash in this instant. The already deep and endless void is even more empty. Under Luo Laro's fierce blow, the dark arm trembled violently at this moment, and the dark light on it was more and more dim. Hum. Break it for me. With a cold hum, Luo Laro's arm suddenly burst. The fierce fighting spirit immediately poured into the palm along the internal meridians, and then the palm pushed forward again. The terrible fighting spirit immediately bombarded out. Under one blow, the dark arm was completely dispersed, and then it slowly dispersed into a mist. The mist dispersed with the wind, but a slightly weak cold laughter came out slowly. Jejia. Do you really think that this necromancer poison is so easy to deal with? It's just a small half-emperor. How can you kill it? Bang! As soon as the voice fell, Xiao Yan, who was still in the air, was suddenly blown away by a thick dark shadow. His fierce strength invaded Xiao Yang like a volcanic eruption, which made Xiao Yang's fighting spirit scattered by a blow at the moment. All channels and bones in his body were greatly injured. If Xiao Yang had not had the protection of different fire armor on his body surface and different fire protection in his body, and his body was strong, I'm afraid this blow alone could seriously hurt him. The powerful force made Xiao Yang's body completely out of control. The cold wind cut his skin like a knife and sent bursts of tearing pain, while his body fell like a meteor and hit the depths of the earth. Just for a moment, half of the world has been smashed into ruins. Poof! Xiao Yang's body lay flat at the bottom of the pit, and the strange fire armor on his body surface completely dispersed at this moment. While the armor dispersed, Xiao Yang couldn't help spewing out a mouthful of scarlet blood. His whole body's momentum also suddenly fell to the bottom of the valley, and his ruddy face recovered a little, and became pale in an instant. The eyelids trembled slightly and lifted slightly. In the eye, the giant beast that had just been forcibly blasted by it appeared again. A pair of huge animal pupils were staring at Xiao Yang, who was smashed into the ruins at the moment. They suddenly shook all over. Then they opened their mouth and a light column of strong wind came in an instant. Damn, it's haunting. The heart secretly scolded. Xiao Yanqiang supported his body and held the giant ruler with one hand. The roaring fighting spirit in his body also condensed rapidly. Looking at the rapidly approaching fighting light column, Xiao Yang's eyes narrowed slightly, and a strange fire appeared in the depths of his pupils. The palm holding the ruler handle also grasped it with one grip. The strength gathered, and the giant ruler inserted deep into the earth slowly lifted. Although he was knocked down by a blow, relying on Xiao Yang's strong physique, that wound was also forcibly ignored by Xiao Yang. At the moment, Xiao Yang is only a slight somersault of qi and blood in his body. After all, he was attacked secretly. Even if his physique is strong, he will not be regarded as nothing. Bah! Spit out all the fishy sweetness in his mouth. Xiao Yang suddenly shook his whole body, and the pain on his body surface was eliminated. The palm holding the giant ruler also made a sudden effort to pull it out from under the earth and cross his chest. Beast, since you are so haunted, I'll beat you to death. With a sharp drink, Xiao Yang's left arm was suddenly shocked. When his palm was open, different fire suddenly gushed out and wrapped Xiao Yang's whole left arm. Different fire constant ancient ruler, drink. The broad hand of different fire crossed over the ruler. The gorgeous different fire lit up the whole ruler in an instant, just like a star, and its breath also soared sharply. The broad giant ruler became more and more huge at this moment. Just in an instant, it became a giant ruler with a width of 100 feet. At the same time, Xiao Yang also burst out again with a violent drink. The bright golden light twinkled from his body surface, and the whole body also rose against the storm. An extremely overbearing King Kong trend also spread along with it, making everything in the world feel like being pinned down by the Golden Mountain for a moment. There is no doubt that the power of the body of Vajraglass is also obvious. The huge golden palm clenched the giant ruler, roared like thunder, and suddenly came out like substantive sound waves. Different fire. Constant. Ancient. Ruler. The terrible sound wave made the fierce fighting light column, which could not help but pause in the air at the moment. The terrible fighting spirit on it was scattered a little. Then Xiao Yang, who incarnated as King Kong Giant, held the giant ruler in his hand and suddenly waved it. A terrible ruler and orn that covered the sky, and the sun instantly shot out, covering the whole void. The awesome terror Kaimang swept across in an instant, and the oncoming fighting light column had not resisted for a moment, which was a moment of destruction, but the power on the Kaimang had not been reduced by a penny. When the fighting light column was broken, it had penetrated the body of the giant beast. The forest white flame wrapped the whole body of the giant beast, and the terrible power of different fire burned it completely. It only took a moment, and the majestic giant beast will turn into nothingness. But even so, the ruler of Lingtian still rushed to the black barrier above the sky. If this blow hit, the blackwood that is at the end of the crossbow at the moment will surely dissipate its power, and all the crises today will be completely erased. When the foot-orn crossed the sky, Xiao Yang stopped in front of the giant beast. Looking at the giant beast that was still churning and struggling, Xiao Yang snorted coldly, two broad palms held it out of thin air, and dozens of exquisite fire lotus appeared out of thin air. This is the last gift for you. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be able to enter the later stage of the 3-star half-emperor today. The voice fell, Xiao Yang's huge body suddenly flashed, and then disappeared into the void, while the dozens of fire lotus bombed the giant beast. At this time, the black barrier above the sky was moving again. Dark pillars of light constantly emerged out of thin air and bombarded the Lingtian's feet and orns. Although this also made the light on the barrier almost dim to a dispensable point, the result was to stop the Lingtian's feet and orns in the void, so that it could not advance any further. His figure flashed. Xiao Yang appeared in the air. Looking at the resisted Kai Mang, he also knew in his heart that the power of this attack was enough to make Haimu fall into a low state. After all, the power of different fire could not be easily suppressed. Even if it was Zihua, it was enough to make Haimu suffer a lot of trauma under Xiao Yang's all-out attack. Therefore, this blow must not be blocked. After biting his teeth, Xiao Yang's eyes also flashed a violent color. With a wave of his palm, countless pills rose in the air and turned into a curtain of heaven, blocking a large void. Immediately after that, Xiao Yang's huge mouth sucked strongly. The energy of heaven and earth between heaven and earth and the thousands of pills were swallowed into his stomach by Xiao Yang, and an extremely violent force condensed rapidly in Xiao Yang's body. Roar. With a violent roar, the violent power also gushed out, and the rich dun fragrance turned into a cloud to cover the whole void. Feeling the more violent power in his body, Xiao Yang's huge palms were staggered in the void in front of his chest, and then the soul power in his mind poured out like a surge, wrapping Xiao Yang's palms. At the same time, an almost invisible force condensed rapidly in Xiao Yang's palms, and a little silver light condensed into a virtual wormhole in Xiao Yang's chest. However, with Xiao Yang's power, it can't be opened at will. Therefore, this virtual wormhole also seems extremely unstable. However, Xiao Yang doesn't care so much at the moment. He doesn't have much time to consolidate this shit wormhole. All his strength at the moment is put on his palms in front of his chest. He relies on all his strength to tear this void wormhole open by force. At this time, in the space behind Xiao Yang, an almost broken giant animal body appeared again. This beast, unexpectedly, failed to die under the terrible bombing like Xiao Yang. It's really an immortal Xiaoqiang. Although he felt that the terrible guy behind him came again, Xiao Yang now had no time to pay attention. The body that had turned into a golden body on his huge palms because of his strength could not help but be cracked. Under such strength, the void in front of Xiao Yang was finally slowly torn apart, but even so, it was still a little far away from that step. Damn! Give me! Open it! With a fierce drink, the void in front of Xiao Yang was suddenly torn by a powerful force. Then he was swallowed by the void wormhole in the eyes of the giant beast. At the same time, the terrible ruler of Lingtian suddenly disappeared at this moment. After losing the target, those terrible fighting pillars also ran through the space and shot down all the way. Finally, they blew out the broken beast. The next moment, under Haimu's almost terrible gaze, Lingtian's Kai Mang bombarded the painted black screen barrier, combined with the terrorist power of Elo and Almu, supported the long-standing black barrier, and finally broke in a bang. On the void, Xiao Yang's body appeared, but at this time, Xiao Yang had also recovered his original size. He glanced at the space where the giant beast was just now, and then smiled bitterly and sneered. I didn't expect you to have such tenacious vitality, but what I didn't expect is that you would finally die in the hands of your own master. It's really sad. The dark barrier was broken, and the shadow of Haimu who could not see his body appeared again when the black fog was creeping. However, at the moment, Haimu's body was weaker than before. The dark fog all over the body, even faintly, could penetrate it and see the slightly illusory body. Haimu, I can't believe it. In the end, it's nothing. That's all for your Millennium Plan today. Luo Laro sneered and looked fiercely with a lingering killing intention. This guy has been in trouble for thousands of years. Luo Ao has long wanted to get rid of Blackwood and then quickly. Until today, this wish can finally be realized. Hearing Luo Laro's words, Qingmu on the other side also nodded heavily. He was a close friend of Luo Laro, and Haimu's actions had a great connection with him. He was naturally happy to destroy the devil. Jie, I can't imagine that when Blackwood planned for 1,000 years and was about to succeed, I was destroyed by your personal boy. However, it doesn't matter. I can't do it for 1,000 years. I can't do it for another 1,000 years. 10,000 years have come. 1,000 years is nothing. Hearing Luo Laro's words, Haimu sneered and ignored Haimu. Instead, he turned his eyes to Xiao Yang. There was a strange flash in a pair of empty eyes. Xiao Yang could not help wrinkling when he saw this eyebrow. This Blackwood, is there any secret move that hasn't been used? Deep in the earth, in a strange dark green space, two figures stand in the air. Jie, human boy, you hurt me a lot today. According to the taboos you violated today, I should break you into pieces and let you suffer physical pain, and then take your soul out. With these thousands of evil spirits as the source, crush your soul, leave a trace of soul, put it into the soul-burning lamp and practice for thousands of years. Blackwood controlled Xiao Yang's body out of thin air with one hand and held it on his chest with the other hand. The broad palm slowly spread out, and a little black light condensed in the palm, and then turned into a dark soul, which twisted constantly in his palm. In a faint way, there was also a little sound of sadness, which made this strange soul more creepy. The palm of his hand freely played with the ghost in his palm. Haimu's other palm controlling Xiao Yang's body waved at will. Then the next moment, he saw that in the space around Xiao Yang, dark green vines as thick as hemp rope flew out and quickly wrapped around Xiao Yang's whole body, even if they were tied to a sudden thick vine root. At the same time, Haimu's idle palm was also held out of thin air. A lamp burning a strange flame appeared in Haimu's palm. Seeing this scene, Xiao Yang couldn't help being a little chilly in his heart. His face suddenly became dignified. He wanted to come to these two things, which are the source of evil spirits and the soul-burning lamp that Haimu just said. The strange cold breath from the lamp, Xiao Yang's body also shivered, and there was a sense of fear in his soul. These things are really the first-class evil things in the world. I'm afraid that even people with great strength will inevitably feel fear when they see these ghost things that torture the soul, not to mention Xiao Yang, who is only 3-star and half emperor. Haimu casually played with the two ancient objects in his palm, glanced at Xiao Yang, and saw the deep dignified color on Xiao Yang's face. There was a sneer on the corner of his mouth, and then he snorted. His palms suddenly shook with a strong grip. There was a dull sound from his palms. The evil spirit and the soul-burning lamp burst. Immediately, Haimu turned his eyes to Xiao Yang again and glanced obliquely at his face. A pair of sharp eyes like an eagle hook stared at Xiao Yang in an instant. His cold eyes were full of fun. Feeling Haimu's gloomy eyes, Xiao Yang instantly felt a palpitation in the depths of his soul, a cold meaning, also rising slowly from the bottom of his heart. He swallowed a mouthful of saliva with a little difficulty. Xiao Yang's pale face seemed bloodless at the moment. This Blackwood was really an old ghost who had lived for thousands of years. His eyes were like climbing out of Joyo Purgatory. On the dark wood's slightly grey face, he squeezed out a smile again. The dry palm was gently raised in mid-air, and the dark green vine roots appeared out of thin air and coiled in mid-air. However, you are really lucky. Although your strength is not very good, your physique has been hard cultivated by you to such a terrible level that makes me feel ashamed, so. At this point, Haimu raised his eyes slightly and stared at Xiao Yang. Then he continued to speak with a yin measured smile. I intend to refine you into a puppet. As soon as Haimu said this, Xiao Yang's pupil suddenly contracted to the size of the tip of a needle, and the skin in the corners of his eyes could not help trembling slightly at the moment. In front of this 10,000-year-old demon, even if his Xiao Yang's mind is no matter how firm, he still has a terrible feeling as if he has been reduced to an infernal hell. The so-called man is old and becomes a fine, but this Blackwood, even if it is said that he is an old monster, has a feeling of contempt. With a cold smile, a kind smile like appreciation appeared on Haimu's face, but it made Xiao Yang's fear of him even worse. This face is really changeable. Although your strength is weak, your growth potential is enough to make up for it. If you become a puppet, You will be my most loyal slave in the future. Of course, as your future master, I will also let you have more powerful strength than what you can get now or even in the future. This should be a reward. Don't remember your gratitude and resentment. Let you become my right-hand man. Haimu, I'm as tolerant and generous as ever, Jie. Hearing Haimu's extremely strange tone, Xiao Yang was more and more dignified. The Qingming in his heart was gradually replaced by fear, awe. Hoodwinked. The light flickered in the old eyes, and Blackwood snorted again. Then the broad dark green sleeve robe brushed his sleeve, and countless vine roots flashed out, completely wrapped Xiao Yang into a huge vine ball and set it on the void. Seeing Xiao Yang sealed in, Haimu took a deep breath of turbid qi tightly held in his body, and the whole person was depressed at this moment. Even he can't stand it under such hard support. What's more, the old thing in the depths of his body hasn't been completely suppressed. It's not easy to frighten Xiao Yang at the moment. If he delays like this, he can't guarantee that the guy in his body will rush out. Under the previous changes, it was not easy to resist the joint efforts of Luo Laro and Aroki. Finally, he was bombarded by Xiao Yang's strange fire. He had completely entered the period of weakness. If Luo Ao hadn't taken some care of his body, I'm afraid he would have been shattered by Luo Ao's blow. At the moment, Haimu has no extra strength to pay attention to Xiao Yang. The previous action is just a false momentum. Its purpose is only to frighten Xiao Yang and make him dare not have any trouble again. After all, Xiao Yang's endless means also made him dare not underestimate it. If Xiao Yang shot at this time, I'm afraid even he was powerless. This situation at the moment is already a great opportunity for him. Only by restoring some strength as soon as possible can he be sure to control Xiao Yang. Otherwise, it is difficult for him to decide who will win in the end. Some trembling bodies became more and more weak. Although they wanted to leave here, their rapidly weak body slowly bent down and finally shrunk like a frozen dog. The black breath lingering all over his body also gradually dissipated. On his grey-black face, bits and pieces of green fluorescence reappeared, making his whole body tremble violently at the moment. The violent trembling and the increasingly bright green fluorescence on his face seemed to arouse the reluctance in Haimu's heart. The vague words came from his mouth when his teeth collided violently. Cluck. Cluck. I won't. Cluck. Let you. So. Easily. Take it back. As soon as the voice fell, I didn't know whether it was black wood or green wood. In the space around the body, dark vines tore the void and appeared in front of the body. As soon as it appeared, the strange smell of lacquer black like a thick fog rushed on quickly and suppressed all the green fluorescence that had just recovered. The violently trembling body also slowly returned to calm. A pair of dark and empty eyes reappeared. In the dark and narrow space, the feeling of weakness from all aspects of his body made Xiao Yang almost coma. He completely squeezed his own strength several times, which made his body fall into an extremely weak state. The muscles of the whole body became extremely sore. Bursts of numbness and weakness hit the whole body. The tingling feeling like a needle pricked made Xiao Yang fall into a semi-coma. The almost dried-up soul power made Xiao Yang feel extremely empty from the body to the soul. At the moment, Xiao Yang is even the most basic breath, which is so weak, and it is like a hairspring. Really? Is that it? From the bottom of his soul, there was an unwilling sigh. The meaning of struggle in the deepest part of Xiao Yang's soul also dissipated slowly. On his pale, paper-like face, there was no blood color. In the corners of his eyes, a glimmer of glittering and translucent water droplets slowly slid down along Xiao Yang's cold cheeks. While a faint cold breath came out from Xiao Yang's whole body, in the cyclone in his body, a palm-sized forest white flame emerged and wiped away Xiao Yang's cold breath in an instant. Smelly boy, I didn't expect you to do it, but it's also true. That guy, with your current strength and mind, it's really difficult to make any psychological resistance, but it seems that guy is also afraid of you, otherwise he won't just frighten you. With the cold breath in Xiao Yang's body receding rapidly, the slightly hoarse old voice of Guyo came out slowly from Xiao Yang's body. In the dark space, the dark green vine roots emit a little fluorescence, which makes the originally dark space a little bright, but among them, a huge vine ball is particularly conspicuous. Suddenly, the original flat space was suddenly distorted, and circles of ripples like water waves spread quietly. An old figure dressed in plain clothes slowly emerged. It's Jiuyu. Jiuyu casually glanced at the huge rattan ball in front of him. A pair of old eyes slowly swept over the dark green rattan, and a dark white flame flashed away in his eyes. With a light hum, the bone and heart moved. In the space in front of us, the forest white flame suddenly appeared. The terrible temperature made the void burst at this moment, revealing an endless void. While the Mori white flame appeared, the huge rattan ball burst into nothingness at the moment of its appearance. Xiao Yang, who was also soft, wanted to fall down. Alas, smelly boy, it's really troublesome. Jiu lightly skimmed his mouth, stroked his big sleeve, and an invisible gentle force rose out of thin air to hold Xiao Yang's body firmly. Then, Jiu sighed helplessly. He gently touched Xiao Yang's eyebrows and thought a little. The different fire in Xiao Yang's body was running quietly at this moment. Look at the running route, which is the skill route of burning formula. It's natural that you won't do anything to supplement Xiao Yang's stupidity with your own fighting spirit. Although that way is fast, it doesn't rely on the power gained from your own refining and absorption after all, which is more or less harmful to your body. What's more, Xiao Yang has been through the means of forced recovery twice. If he comes again, at this moment, Xiao Yang's state is likely to leave sequelae. This, not to mention Xiao Yang, is determined not to accept. With the slow operation of the burning Ju skill in the body, in this slightly narrow space, a trace of subtle heaven and earth energy also slowly gathered from the void. In a flash, it entered Xiao Yang's body. With the operation of the burning Ju skill, it was refined into strands of pure fighting qi by different fire and merged into the cyclone. And Xiao Yang's pale face was gradually smeared with a faint ruddy, almost broken breath at this time, and gradually recovered its stability. When the first ray of sunshine in the morning shone on the walls of this ancient city, countless people suppressed the excitement of the night, and finally became as fierce as a runaway wild horse at the moment. All kinds of figures are flying towards the empty square in the city, which has been divided into two parts, in order to occupy a good enough position. After all, today's event is not generally grand. Yesterday's scenes of fierce and domineering are also clearly engraved in everyone's mind. Now the empty square, which is divided into two parts, makes people remember the terrible strength of the young man in black. Of course, while they were shocked by the strength of the young man in black robe, they never forgot that the young semi-imperial strongman with terrible strength, his medicine refining skills were no inferior to those medicine refining masters who specialized in medicine refining. Today's event is not so much to watch the drug refining competition between the two senior refiners as to see Xiao Yang's performance. Xiao Yang's prestige has awed countless people present. Even the long-standing Mo Zhai is now sneered at by the public. Hey, this old man is really thick-skinned and half of his body is buried in the earth. He still wants to win the Elder Rock Owl by bullying the young. How can you compare the medicine refining talent of the Elder Rock Owl? Cut. I have specialized in medicine refining all my life. I only entered the second-class medicine refiner when I grow old. Compared with the young second-class medicine refiner of Elder Yang Xiao, it's a waste that 8 horses can't get back. Listening to the increasingly warm sneer and disdain on the surrounding stands, Mo Zhai stood in the void. On his old and dry face, the wrinkled skin trembled violently, and the palm under his sleeve robe was full of green tendons. The fighting spirit in his body could not help running, stretching and contracting like a snake letter between his fingers. The murderous eyes slowly swept through the audience, with a trace of dangerous breath, which was like a cold steel knife in everyone's throat, making the mockery on everyone's face quickly converge. Perhaps this Mo Zhai is indeed extremely deficient compared with Xiao Yang, but for these ordinary strong people, it is still an irresistible terror. After feeling the cold eyes of Mo Zhai, the hearts of the people present also couldn't help but shiver fiercely and shut up quickly. Just a breath, on this huge square, the ridicule and disdain of the previous moment were quickly covered up, and the busy square gradually became quiet. At this time, in the middle of the square, the calm void suddenly spread a circle of ripples like water waves. The appearance of this scene is also about to attract the attention of many people. As the space fluctuated more and more violently, a huge floating stone platform tore the void and appeared in the sight of everyone. The huge stone platform makes this huge void square cover nearly 1/3 of its area at this moment. The people on the stage looked at another small void square, and their faces were also amazed. The next moment, a familiar old voice on the stone platform slowly spread. Hey, I've kept you waiting for a long time. Some things have to be handled because of some small episodes yesterday. However, please rest assured that today's meeting of medicine refiners will not disappoint you. The old man who spoke was naturally Jiu Li, the president of the Medicine Refining Association. Jiu Li's voice came out, and the square that had just become silent suddenly began to boil again. As for the gloomy look of Mo Zhai who wanted to kill people, the people directly ignored it. After all, with Jiu Li, a more terrible strong man, Mo Zhai, he didn't have the courage to make any more chaos. Seeing the square boiling again at the moment, Jiu Li's lips also showed a satisfied smile. After sweeping his eyes, he was shivering Mo Zhai. Jiu Li smiled coldly, and then turned his eyes to the whole void square again. The thin and broad palm gently pressed the void in front of him, and the light pressure spread, so that countless people in the scene could not help looking at Jiu Li. Feeling the eyes that were shooting at her, Jiu Li laughed and immediately glanced across the audience. Under the excited eyes, he slowly opened his mouth and said with a smile, "Ladies and gentlemen, today is the final of this year's Herbalist Association. Of course, it is also the most exciting competition in the history of our Herbalist Association, because the two herbalists present this time are high-level herbalists. This will be a real peak duel. Wow." Once Jiu Li's sonorous and powerful words fell, the whole void square was completely boiling at this moment. There was an uproar on the huge square, and bursts of fierce cries spread to the sky, which made the world tremble slightly. Feeling the more and more warm atmosphere around him, Jiu Li's smile was even brighter on his old face, and immediately his eyes swept the whole audience at will. After deep eyes paused on Mo Zhai, Jiu Li seemed to think of something. The new chief refiner of the Herbalist Association, but he didn't show up. With some inexplicable emotion in his heart, Jiu Li's eyes narrowed slightly, and his fierce eyes slowly swept through the audience. Finally, he was on the empty referee's bench. Jiu Li's pupils suddenly shrunk, and the expression on the old man's face also gradually solidified. In his heart, an uneasy mood slowly appeared. "This guy, why don't you come again?" After being stunned for a long time, Jiu Li's muscles twitched at the corners of his mouth. He said with a sad smile in his heart, but in his heart, unlike last time, this time, he was very upset. And at this time, on such a huge void square, the change starts again. In the vast void, a huge space vortex appeared out of thin air. The terrible power of space made the faces of the people present extremely frightened. The breath in this was enough to devour the whole wild ancient city. Even Jiu Li and other 8-star and half-emperor strong people could not compete with it. Under the frightened eyes of the people, the vortex of terror differentiated into a huge door opening, and the dark endless void was exposed in front of the people. Then, under a violent fluctuation, an old figure slowly stepped out of it. At this moment, all the semi-imperialist strong men present suddenly changed their faces, and their eyes looking at the old man were full of surprise. This video will end here.